Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. This week we are talking with wedding photographer Todd Laffler about creating a moment versus capturing a moment. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Hey, welcome back, my photo friends. It is good to have you here today. We have a great episode that I know is going to mean a lot to a lot of you. It is something that many struggle with when it comes to creating something versus just simply capturing something. Today's guest is going to break down his process that has helped him create fantastic images over the past, couple decades and be one of the most awarded fearless photographers for his imagery. But first, I want to let you know that a few weeks ago, see if you had seen this, is that I had created a video on YouTube that I had published, which is all about how to edit with presets in Lightroom Cc here in 2021. So obviously, editing your photos is something that is very important to the photographic process, whether it just be culling down or just be putting your signature on your photos. And if you're shooting in RAW, then the photos that are coming out of your camera are very flat, they're very boring. They're meant to be edited. They're meant to put your signature on it. So because there's been a lot of questions lately, either within the group or that I've seen online or through emails, and obviously I have 52 free Lightroom presets that are available for you to download. I didn't feel like that was enough. So I went ahead and made a walkthrough video where I walk you through exactly, kind of what are the point of presets, why I love presets. There are 3 reasons why I love presets, and it is not because it is a one-click solution, because again, it's not a one-click solution, but it will help you transform your images from something that's dull and boring that comes straight out of camera, again, if you're shooting RAW, into something that is really meaningful and fantastic. And also, I share with you what presets are not, and I walk you through the editing process through a collection of images that have been provided by other community members here in the Beginner Photography Podcast in the Facebook group. So check it out. I'm going to post a link to that video, which is more than 30 minutes long. I mean, I really go in depth here in the Facebook group, or I'm sorry, I guess I will post it in the Facebook group, sure, but I will also post the link to that video in the show notes of this episode. So wherever you're listening to it, I believe you can just swipe up, find the show notes right there. You're going to find a YouTube link, and go ahead and check that out, because I really want you to feel more confident in your edits and be able to capture, all that my job is to help you get closer to outputting something that is closer to the version of what you saw in your head. You see something in your head, I want to help you be able to capture it, and then obviously I want to help you be able to edit it as well so that you can share it with the world, because when you can create something and share it with the world, that is where the true magic of photography happens. So again, the link for that is going to be in the show notes, and if you're just interested in grabbing the free presets, my 52 free presets, then you can do so by heading over to freephotographypresets.com. Grab them right there. So again, this week, super excited for this episode. I chat with Todd Laffler. Now, Todd is a wedding photographer, and honestly, he's a wedding photographer who I aspire to be. His images, just truly, truly incredible stuff. And he has an eye for turning the ordinary, the things that you just see in an ordinary day, into something incredible just through his composition and his lighting and waiting for that moment. But before you listen to this interview, I want you to check out the photos. I want you to check out his photos. I posted them in the show notes. So again, another reason for you to check out the show notes of this episode, just so that you can get an idea of the kind of work that Todd is producing, because I would say that it's not your parents' wedding photography. It's not your grandparents' wedding photography. It is something really unique. And again, it's all about his eye. He doesn't have any crazy special settings. He just finds something in front of him and makes it incredible. So again, in the show notes, you're going to find some of his photos, as well as a link to his Instagram and his website, so that you can see more of his images, because I do reference a photo or two in this interview, and I want you to fully understand what is going on here. So do that. I'll go ahead and pause, or you can pause it right now and go ahead and check that out. Okay, you're back. That was quick. Awesome. Also, so normally, before we get into this episode, normally what I do is when I have a guest on, we start a Zoom call. I take a few minutes of prep, make sure that the person being interviewed has maybe some water, or that I can answer any questions that they have. But today, or for this interview, the questions just kind of started happening organically. So I was trying to edit this thing up and it didn't really work out. So I said, screw it. And I just left in the entire chat right from where he joins the Zoom call. Again, it just feels more organic that way as far as how the questions get started. Because if I were to start it just where he starts talking, it felt weird and then there wasn't any context. So I really hope that you enjoy it. Here is our chat. I guess that was a weird way to say it. So let's get into this interview with Todd Laffler. Here we go. Let's see. Todd. Oh, hold on. It says connecting audio. There you go. Todd,
hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yeah. Awesome. Right on.
Right,
It
cool.
looks like you are in a dungeon right now. Look at this. Is this a basement? Is this just a dark office?
I'm just hiding all the junk in my office. If you want me to turn some lights on, I can. I don't think you'll like.
No. It's fine. I think it's awesome. It looks pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
Just typically, it's funny. You always get. I've found that when it comes to podcast episodes, there's like a wide range of people who either do or don't get ready for the video side of it. Either they'll show up. I mean, They got like the full like DSLR. They're ready to go. Like this is like a professional interview. But then the other people, I've had people like do interviews just sitting on their bed with like a big window like directly behind them, and they're just totally silhouetted. You can't see them at all.
Keeping it real.
Yeah, this is the exact opposite of that, where everything behind you is black, but you're perfectly lit. So this is wonderful. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't do anything fancy. I just have a blank screen on my second monitor here. Got to adjust the color temperature and
perfect.
No biggie.
Yeah. So how'd the internet thing go? What was up with that? It just wasn't working for you today?
Yeah, just crapped out, and then I was like, oh, I don't even know if I know how to contact you without the internet. It's like I don't who is this guy?
Right. Yeah. I
know. So sorry about that. Yeah, everything fixed itself, obviously.
Good.
But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy when the internet goes out and you realize how much you actually rely on it. It's like,
oh my gosh, every single time. Yeah, I once so we had I guess it's AT&T fiber. They came to our neighborhood, so they installed everything. I didn't know, like I was gone when they installed the line in our backyard. So I didn't know that they had went ahead and did it. And one day I was out mowing my lawn, literally right before like an hour before a podcast interview. And I mowed right over it and just severed it. And we had no internet. So I had to, I think it was 3 days before we had, before they could come out and turn it back on. So I'm glad that yours got fixed like right away.
Yeah, I wasn't mowing the lawn or anything. So I'm a cord cutter like you. You take it seriously there.
That's hilarious. You can't blame anybody for that one.
No.
Let's see. So are you, I know that I got a lot of questions for you today. I'm excited to get into this, but before we do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so. I mean,
okay.
Are we recording now? Like, is this off the record?
Yeah, no, technically it's recording, but this won't be in the interview at all.
Okay, cool. I'll be perfectly upfront with you. Like, if you don't, you could put this out there. I don't care. I'm kind of like burnt out on weddings. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm hoping trying to like, I'm gonna be as helpful as I can be, but like just know like in the back of my mind, like I'm kind of burnt out on it. So I don't know what you're expecting, but
No, I love that. I love that honesty, honestly. And it's one of those things that I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I kind of feel the same way, and I don't want to be a 60-year-old guy at weddings, working with like, 22-year-olds.
I'm starting to find I have more in common with the parents of the bride and the groom now than I do with the actual bride and groom.
Really?
So it's like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I don't,
right. Sure.
It's just, I put so much pressure on myself to perform, and the wedding days are just so incredibly stressful. It's just, I've just kind of had enough.
Yeah. So what does that mean for you? Like what's next?
I wish I knew. um, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm always so envious. I see other photographers like, yeah, I'm closing up shop and they figured out what they're going to do next. And like, I feel a little stuck, unfortunately, but,
Really? Oh
it's
man.
it's not to say like, I'm not like, I don't show up to a wedding and I'm like, like a dick and I'm like all,
Oh, of
This
course.
sucks," like I put on the happy face.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it just comes down to the couple. It's just some couples, unfortunately, don't have great chemistry, and it's like hard to muster up the enthusiasm to be like, yeah, we're getting great stuff, you guys are
Right.
awesome. And it's just like, yeah, but I do, on the flip side, I have couples too where it's like, oh my god, I love these people, I can
Yeah.
feel the love and the energy, and I'll give them 120%, no doubt. But overall, petering.
Oh, that is so great to hear. I'm glad that it's sometimes I feel like I'm kind of like the only one in that camp.
No,
I,
you're definitely not. You're definitely not. I think what you see online is everybody's happy about everything because it doesn't look
weddings
good on
are
you. If you're like, I hate weddings. Hey, you guys should hire me to shoot your wedding. I hate weddings. Like
right. Yeah.
they don't go together. So like you kind of have to put up the facade, or people I feel are disingenuous sometimes with how much they love their clients. Like it's like, really? Like maybe they do. I don't know, but like I just feel there's an overwhelming sort of everything's awesome all the time.
Yeah.
Like no
Yeah.
one's being like, I feel like there's not a lot of reality. Like, yeah, guys, this is really draining and hard. And, not everything's fun. The food sucks. And, like you're
If
sitting on
you
a
get food.
floor.
Yeah.
If you eat food, you're on a floor like a second class citizen. You're lucky if you get utensils. And it's just
Yeah.
like, what am I doing? Like, I feel like a third class citizen, like in steerage, like treated just like crap sometimes. So
I know.
all right. So you can feel free to like steer me, like if I start getting a little too,
No,
negative, just
listen,
pull me back a little
I'll
bit.
tell
Cause
you what.
I don't want to be that guy, that disgruntled guy,
No,
but
no,
like
no, no, no.
I'm 50 and I've been doing this a long time. And I'm just like, it's a natural progression, I think, just to,
No, I get it. But this interview is not, we're not talking about like how great weddings are. I promise
okay,
you that.
cool.
This is none of that. One thing that I found so interesting about you and your photography is that it's very clear that um I think you have a great ability to be able to pre-visualize what it is that you want and then capture that. So that is something that there's a huge disconnect with new photographers, and that's kind of really where I want to focus this.
I see
So
that so often. It just drives me bananas when I see people, stroking each other's egos about using mag mods, and oh, look how cool this looks. But the couple, like, do they even like each other? It's like, what
right.
is this for? It's like, that stuff drives me nuts. Like, I drive that home. Like when I used to do more workshops, it's just like the heavy lifting of the photo, like, should be the couple's connection, and they should look happy or in love or whatever you're going for, and all that other stuff you add on top, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Like you don't start with like, look how cool, and look at how many mirrors and 6 flashes, and it's like it's all concentrated on like how it was lit or what the couple is standing in front of or their environment. But it's like almost like an afterthought is, do these people like each other? Like
Right.
some people get it, and when you can bring, I have no problem doing all that, but I think that needs to be the starting point, is the connection between the couple. Then you add on, not the other way around. And I find that's seems to be prevalent these days.
Yeah, it kind of there's this term, and I don't remember where I heard it from, but it's a term that comedians use called, like, I think it's playing to the back of the room, where
Mm,
it's like, as a comedian, you make jokes knowing that there's a bunch of comedians in the back of the room, and like you're trying to impress them, but
right, right,
you're
right,
totally missing out on the audience that's right in front of you, who's ultimately the people who are going to become fans of
right.
yours and
And
do whatever. And it seems like there is a lot of that in the photography industry, where people are playing to other photographers, like you said, like, let's see how many flashes I can use, let's see how many
yeah,
crazy
and
gels I can use, or smoke bombs or mirrors.
right, and it just becomes like a circus, a dog and pony show. And
Yeah.
honestly, like I'm not judging that. Like I think that's just part of where a lot of people are. And a
Mhm.
lot of the people that have moved on to something else, maybe you just don't see their work as much because they don't need to do that, but it's there. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're
Mhm.
only seeing what we see, and the people who just do regular, good old fashioned good work don't feel the need, like, hey, look what I did this weekend. Look how cool that is. Like, it's
Right.
like, look what I can do. So you're not seeing it. So it may be like a perception of what's happening, but it may not be reality. So
I had never even considered that. That's really interesting to think about. But I mean, you have to be right. I feel like the working photographers have to be
they're
busy
just
enough
working.
to,
They
yeah.
don't even know they're there, and they're doing fine work, and their couples are happy, and they're making money, and it's like, why doesn't need to be that complicated.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, and like I said, I'm not judging anyone for doing any of that, because if you go back like 13, 14, 15 years on my work, I had a similar phase. It wasn't with, necessarily with what's happening today, and it doesn't
mhm.
matter. The parallel is I was focused on making work that I wanted to see, or that I impressed me, and it was more about me, and my couple was just a prop, and ends to a mean to get there. And knowing and growing from that, and realizing like some of the stuff I made, I'm just like, it's embarrassing to me, but it's like, it's fine. But like back in the day, it was like, wow, look what he's doing. It's so quirky. And like, yeah, but now like no one's running into a burning building to get some of this stuff. Like, it's like, where, it's like, no heads, and they're just, it looks whatever. It's just, like I said, I think it's a progression. And I think a lot of people who are currently in about right now into about how many flashes and smoke bombs and gear and all that stuff, that's fine. And I think eventually they will probably move away from that stuff.
That's the
But
goal,
like
right? You hope.
what's that?
I said that's the goal. You hope that they do. And it doesn't just
i
turn into, you
I think
know,
they will eventually. And so I don't know, maybe I can plant that seed for someone to get there faster, maybe. And again, it's not a race. It's not about like, you need to get here or you didn't make it. It's just like, I think it's just something about just reprioritizing what's important with what you're doing, and trying not to make it as much about yourself or trying to impress other photographers. Um, but
I love
because
that.
and honestly, that's a game that, if you get into it, you'll just never be satisfied. there's
Right.
always there's always going to be someone who's doing it better, or do, whatever that is. Or that these fleeting likes and comments are like, if it's like a little
Everything.
hit of dopamine, and it's like
Yeah.
you never get your fix. It's like, well, you're on to the next one. You have a short-term memory. It's like, okay, now I need the next one. What's the next one? Like,
Yeah.
and so, you know, that's the awards, that's getting, the likes and the comments and the followers and all that stuff. Again, totally fine. Nothing, necessarily wrong with it. It's just, I feel like eventually, um, I think you probably grow as as a human or as a photographer, and kind of move beyond that stuff.
Yeah. I think that goes back to what I was saying. Like, that's the hope. Hopefully it just doesn't turn into, if there's another photographer who's doing something better than me, like, oh, I'm just gonna go chase that rather than figure out like your own voice. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, and I feel like that isn't the only avenue. So, in other words, you can find your own voice and still be on that treadmill. So, because I feel
mm,
like back in the day, I had my own voice, but so I don't, I never felt like I was chasing what someone else was doing. But in the end, I still felt like I was still on that, treadmill of like, well, what am I going to do this week that's going to outdo what I did last week?
uh,
How am I going to get people to, really wow over what I've done? And so I don't know that it's always about chasing what someone else is doing. Like I said, even it's about, I think, figuring out what you are doing, and hold on, pump the brakes. Is this genuine? What is the reason behind doing this? What is my purpose in creating this type of imagery? And
So
I've always, any day I would take a heartfelt moment that, you don't see all the time, you can't reproduce. Like that is just, I've come to like cherish those images over the most creative thing I've ever done. Pales in comparison to a genuine moment between, it could be anybody, but like, it's grandma's embrace. And now I start actually, and this sounds morbid maybe, but like I start fast forwarding, like grandma's gonna die, like,
sure.
and how much this photo will mean to the people involved versus, a photo where the couple's this big and, they're backlit and there's smoke going on. Like, it's, it's just my priorities have totally shifted from, searching out real genuine moments, and just kind of really focusing and honing in on that. And it's interesting because I find that a lot of times when you're hunting for these great genuine moments, you're actually, I call it kind of photographing with your ears more than your eyes,
Hmm.
because it's like a lot of times I can be, whatever I'm focused on, I can also hear what's happening. It's like tuning in with your ears as well, not just your eye, not just seeing what's in front of you, but hearing what's going on around you and sort of trying to make connections and observations between, oh, I see this person, it's like reading people, like this person is important to that person and these two don't get along, and just sort of like reading the room and figuring out, because then that's going to increase your chances later, of course, of, getting that great moment, because you've already figured out who's who means what to who, and that type of thing.
How does that develop though? Like for you, is that just like, did you realize that like from the beginning, or does that grow just with
Um,
experience?
I I think it grows if you want it to. So you have to consciously try to, if you're not already doing that, I think to hone into that aspect of, not always having, the camera blocking, because you're only seeing this little rectangle, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much more happening. So like sometimes I think it's good to like just go in a room and just like don't even pick up your camera, just kind of like, look around, like see what's happening. And you just, you can even just observe, where the light's coming from, something simple, right? Like before you just start shooting at the wedding, it's like slow down, let me figure out, like, okay, light's coming from that way, okay, mom's over there, she doesn't seem to be that interested, there's something going on. Just trying to read the room and just get a feel for things before you just start, you know just shooting at the wedding. So but back to your question, I think a lot of people see my work and they see kind of like fun imagery, people quirky moments, or in between moments, or people a lot of dance floor stuff, just people having a lot of fun, and they make the assumption that that's how I am, that's my personality. So back in the day, I'm sure there was a lot of people was like, don't meet your hero, because I'm like, I'm shy and reserved, I'm like, I'm not like my work.
Yeah.
I feel like I use that as sort of like my voice to try to be more outgoing perhaps, or what have you. But as a kid, I've always been very shy, and I think with that comes a lot of observation.
Mhm.
It's like not being shy and passive, but being shy and being like, involved with what's happening, just not verbally, right? So it's paying attention to people and being able to read people, I think. And some of that, I think, comes naturally from that, just from being shy. And
Mhm.
that's something that I do encourage people to do sometimes, is just, instead of go out and photograph, like go out and sit on a park bench and just like view relationships and see, not creepily, believe me, not like,
It's easy to do.
leave
Yeah.
leave the trench coat at home, just like, very, from a distance, and just sort of like, look at, you can sort of read people's faces, and I can almost tell sometimes like when someone's going to laugh, or the cadence of a conversation, and sort of read that. And those are like little tells that will help you get those photographs. And also just like not quitting on a photograph, like, okay, that's the moment, I got it, check it out. That whole shooting through the moment of like the whole process, like don't give up on the moment, like because once you think you've got it, sometimes something better happens or something different happens that you weren't expecting. So just sticking with the moments, I think, is important too. And that can be difficult for a lot of newer photographers, I feel like, because especially at a wedding, there's so much to cover. There's so many things that you need to photograph.
Mm-hmm.
So to slow down seems counterintuitive. To stay with a moment and see it through, like have conviction in what you're photographing and go, you know what, I think there's something developing here. I'm going to stick with this. I'm not going to give up and go start photographing the shoes or whatever else is going on. And sometimes it pans out and you get a great shot, and sometimes, you know what, nothing really happened, but you got to take that chance.
Like, how often does something better come along? If let's say that you're right here, mom's putting on a necklace, you get that, mom's putting on the necklace, you get the smile or whatever, this looks great, okay, dress is buttoned, seems like the moment's done. Do you walk away and do something else, or do you wait and you let the tension build for something else to happen?
So I guess in your example, like I could say, well, okay, mom did the necklace, right? Psh, got it. Okay. And instead of moving on, like, just paying attention, like maybe the next thing that happens is it's like too tight and the bride makes a face like, oh, you're killing me. And that turns into another moment. And then they both start laughing. And that's the moment. That's the real, the putting on the necklace is just the impetus to lead to the the really meaty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
So right. Yeah. You never know until you
right.
just shoot through it. Yeah. So one of the things that I always found interesting about your work is just that, like, you have, one of the reasons why I reached out to you was just, and I said this earlier, it's just like, you have this ability, I feel, to pre-visualize something and then capture it, which many new photographers don't have. But in that example there, you have plenty of photos that aren't just you standing in front of a bride with the mom doing the necklace, camera's eye level. You're doing something different. There's a reflection, there's a mirror, there's a window, there's a way that the light hits. Can you talk to me about that visualization process for you, and when you go from taking the safe shot to doing something a little bit different?
Yeah, and so you get the safe shot, right? And then you can move on from there and say, well, what else can I do? And there is some pre-visualization, like if so, for example, if a bride's getting her shoes on or something like that, and she's being helped by a couple people, I'll get the shot, right, the normal shot, and then I'll automatically think, well, how would this look from a bird's eye view? How would this look from a worm's eye perspective? And then sort of make a decision, like, or things happen very quickly, so sometimes you just have to shoot what's in front of you, and there's nothing wrong with that. So sometimes that safe shot is all you need, right? So I think that's important, to know that you don't always have to be like Joe Creative all day long. Like sometimes like just shooting what's in front of you normally is all you need to do. That's it. That's the photo. Like, don't overcomplicate it. And then, but if you have that and nothing's happening, you might as well try to get a different perspective, or, I think I definitely do have some pre-visualization. So like I said, before I lift the camera up to my face, like I'm looking at what's in front of me and saying, well, how do I want to capture this? What is the best way? What is the best angle? What's the best focal length? Where should I stand? Where is the best position to I want to maximize, I want to squeeze that photo, right, to as much as I can get out of it. So that's where, having a plan and sort of filling your frame with intention, and not just going, oh, I'm just shooting, and you're zooming around and you're getting stuff, but you don't really know what. So it's like kind of a little bit of a slowing down and just figuring out, okay, here's the scene in front of me. What's the best way I can photograph this? And so like you formulate a plan and then you execute, right? So it's almost like, it's like, instead of trying to be like, I don't know what's going on, you're fumbling and I don't know, I'm just grab this lens. And it's like, okay, slow down. All right, here's my idea. And it may not work out, but at least you have an idea. And then from there, it's just, like I said, executing. And you know what to do.
Hold on. Let's talk about the it may not work out thing, because obviously, weddings can be high stress. And there's one photo that you have in particular that I'm thinking of a it's like I believe it's the bride's father is having a first look with his daughter, the bride, and it's him sitting on a couch, and then above him is a mirror, and the bride is walking down the stairs, which you can see the reflection in the mirror, right?
Right.
Like there's no, do you know what photo I'm talking about here?
I think I do. And full disclosure, I didn't come up with that shot. So, I'm not going to take credit for that. So that's part of like hiring, and having good people with you, who can, because yeah, some days I'm just like, I'm stressed out with whatever's going on.
Gotcha.
So that photo came about by my girlfriend, Danette, who's also a great photographer, who, because she was in more of a supportive assisting role, she could slow down even more and go, oh, I see, she's upstairs. There's a bench here. I see a mirror, like she could slow down even more than I could, and sort of said, okay, what if we do it this way?
Your role in that moment, was that the safe shot? You just did whatever you had to do to capture that moment?
Wait, sorry, say that again.
In that moment with your girlfriend taking that shot with the mirror above the dad.
Oh, okay.
Where were you?
No. So I took the shot. She wasn't shooting.
Oh, I see.
She was like going, oh, well, yeah. She's like, how, like, hey, here's what I see. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Thank you. Like you saved me there,
Gotcha,
I mean,
gotcha.
And to be honest, like, I probably could have shot it a different way that wasn't as creative. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, we don't know because I didn't do that, but
sure.
I have a feeling like if I shot it less creatively, that the moment wouldn't mean any less or more to the bride or the father. Do you know what I mean? Like you're responding to that photo as a photographer and as somebody who is not personally involved. And that's why I feel like you are reacting to that, because you maybe, you're seeing like some creativity, you're seeing like, oh, wow, why didn't I think of that? Right. Or something along those lines. But what I've come to realize is like, honestly, and I tell this to my girlfriend because we shoot together a lot. And sometimes when I'm in that assisting role and I'm like, she's like overcomplicating something, at least from my perspective, I kind of fall back on that. Like if you set up a hair light or something, or set up some other thing, is that going to make the client like that photo any more or less? And 9 times out of 10, it's like, no, it's not going to make any difference. I'm not saying, and I'm not advocating like, don't do your job and don't try 110% at all.
Right.
But I'm saying like, conserve your resources, like when you can do that, and when you're maybe overcomplicating it for no reason. And and I find it helpful to just go like, well, the client is going to see their dad reacting to them coming down the steps. Like either way, if it's in a mirror coming down the steps, like the dad's going to have the same reaction. The dad's reaction is not affected by how I shot it. Right. So I can shoot it another way that's not as creative, and he's still going to feel the same things. And when I show the photo the other way, that's not so creative, they're still going to love that photo. You know what I'm saying?
I do. So then why, I guess not why, but like in that same situation there, like there's almost no chance for a safe shot. You know what I mean? Like if you were to blow that shot, like how do you weigh that? How do you weigh those pros and cons of getting something creative and something that you're going to love and that that your clients are going to love versus missing the moment almost entirely? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that, and a lot of that is your conviction in the shot, right? So knowing like, okay, I can see where the light's coming from. I can see that, I tested out with my girlfriend, like go stand up on the 4th step from the top and I'll know like it's going to work. Right. So, and then just from experience of like, oh, yeah, I think I can get this shot. It's a little bit of a calculated risk. And at the same time, like if I did blow it, there's still, still going to come down the stairs. There still will be a moment. It's like, it's kind of like if the client didn't get that photograph, not that it didn't happen, but like, they still have it, but they may not go, oh, but you didn't get that 5 seconds earlier when my dad's tear was like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
so it's a bit of a calculated risk, and sometimes you go for it.
Yeah. Have you ever had a moment where you're like, this shot is going to be like a banger. This shot is going to be so great. And then it just falls totally flat. And like,
Yeah.
how does that work for you?
I mean,
guess let me re-ask that question.
Yeah.
Does that happen more often than not? I guess what I'm trying to figure out here is like, what is like, hold on, let me try to formulate this real quick, because
Okay.
I know that oftentimes I will have an idea for a photo and I will try to make it work and it will fall flat and I will hate it. But going after that photo in the first place taught me something, I guess, for the future, or sometimes the failures that I have when trying to get a photo will help me moving forward. So like, I don't hate those failures, and that I'm okay with making mistakes quite often, as long as, I do get the safe shot there. So I guess for you, I guess what I'm trying to figure out here is do you do more or less creative photos in the hopes that they turn out? I guess that's the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I guess after, years of experience will sort of help you get to the probability of something working out or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, just with experience, you're going to know from those failures that, hey, this is a lower probability, I'm not going to go for it. But to answer your question, honestly, I will take a lot more risks when I have a second photographer and they are getting those safe shots. And I have full, faith in my second photographer to get those safe shots for me. And that just frees me up entirely.
Mm-hmm,
So that would be like what I would recommend if you want to start like taking more risks is hire a good second photographer to do the safe stuff. And then you're free.
Has it always been that way for you? Like when you first got started in photography, was there like an ego thing involved where you're like, no, this all has to be me? Or
no, not at all. I think I was super happy to offload some of the more straightforward stuff to the second photographer. And honestly, sometimes they got better shots than I did. That's just how it goes. It's just that's the nature of the beast, and that's fine. I'm thankful they got the shot, so it's totally fine.
How'd you get started in photography? I hadn't even. I realized now that we're 32 minutes in, like this is just the interview. Like there's not going to be a formal introduction. So, how did you get started in photography?
No worries. So when I was 17, my mother is still, I guess, to this day, like very creative person. She was always doing, watercolor paintings and calligraphy, and she did photography. So she set up a dark room in our basement, and she showed me how to, shoot and develop film in the basement. And when I saw that, like, the negatives there, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can just do this in the basement? Like, sign me up. Like, I thought it was just like next level wizardry. I was like, how can you do this in the basement? So I'm like, yeah. So I got a camera and basically just started photographing what I knew, and at the time was skateboarding. So this is going back, probably 1987-ish. And so I just started photographing skateboarding, and that actually sort of developed a little bit of my style where I do shoot with a little wider angle lens, probably than most people would be comfortable, and from low camera angle. So a lot of the time when I'm shooting those low angle, wide angle stuff, I'm not really looking at through the camera. I know nowadays they have I'm old school, but like they have the flip screen and you can look, and that's great. That's like so much easier. But I just became so comfortable just knowing if I put my camera on the ground at what millimeter, at 16 or whatever it is, how to tilt it and just kind of shoot. And that's also how I shoot a lot of the dance photos too. It's just over my head like this, and I just kind of know how much to tilt the camera. I know what my frame looks like pretty much. And I think that helps. I think that helps being a better photographer, because you're not like looking through something. You're photographing, but I'm like looking at you. I'm making eye contact. I can see exactly what's happening, and I can see what's happening over here that's outside of the frame. And so I think that frees you up to be, more agile. So that's how skateboarding back then was, probably still now, very wide angle lenses, very close to the subject, a lot of low from the ground type shots or above. So that, I think, definitely influenced me when I started photographing weddings. So I actually went to college for photography. I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art. And then I think it's like in 1995 or so, I started second shooting for another wedding photographer. I did that for 2 years, and then, quickly realized like I can make a lot more money if I just did it myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2007, that's when I started my own business, and I've been doing it since then.
How did you go from skateboarding to the weddings though? Like, when you went to college, did you want to continue with sports, or was weddings the goal?
No, I didn't know anything. I just knew skateboarding. Like, I was hardcore into skateboarding before it was cool. I even had a skateboard magazine I made. My dad, fortunately, had a printing company at the time. So a friend of mine, we made our own little magazine, and my
That
dad
is
would print them.
awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I still have like boxes of them in the basement, like tons of them, because he was a big commercial printer. So like,
Yeah.
he wouldn't print like 10. It was like thousands.
10,000.
It's like, nah. So anyway, yeah, when I went to college, it was a very fine art college, which, I learned a lot in college, but I kind of learned not to like fine art photography. I always seemed drawn and more interested in very simplistic images, very graphic images. Each image could stand on its own as a photograph. And at the time anyway, at my college, it was a lot more about your concept of, you're going to put a group of photos up on the wall, and what's your concept? What are you trying to say? And I was never really trying to say, I didn't care. I wasn't trying to say anything. I just wanted to make cool images, or,
Yeah.
and so I didn't quite fit in that arena, which, was fine. So, but after I graduated in 93, and then I went to work for my dad at the printing company, and I basically, I think my camera had broken. I just threw it in the closet, and I never touched it. Until my dad's printing company went out of business, like in 2003. I picked up a Sony, I don't know which one it was, but it was like a prosumer, I forget what they call it, consumer, prosumer, whatever. It was a pretty decent digital camera, and that was my first digital camera. And I was collecting unemployment, and I took 30 days and drove cross country, and I sort of like fell back in love with photography. I was like, this is kind of fun. But then quickly realized, to pay the bills, you need to do something more substantial than try to sell at like, a street fair or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I just answered an ad on Craigslist for a wedding photographer. They needed a second shooter. And so I'm like, all right, I'll try that.
So what was it about weddings that drew you in? Like, because obviously action sports, it's high adrenaline. There's always something going on. What's going to be the next trick that happens? And weddings, while they are kind of stressful, kind of follow the same timeline throughout the day. So what was it about them that you enjoyed most?
Well, there was that aspect of like, drawing parallels with skateboarding photography of, things happen quickly. You have kind of one chance sort of to get this amazing trick at its zenith, at the best point.
Mm-hmm.
So, I got used to picking out the moment. Got it. Instead, it wasn't like, all right, I'll figure it out later what the moment was. So there was kind of that. But at that time when I got into shooting weddings, I really wasn't doing any sports, any skateboarding photography at that time. I really was doing more like landscapes and, just that type of stuff.
Mhm.
So, honestly, my drive, what led me to weddings is just, making more money with using the camera.
Sure. So at some point, because today, I mean, you've been named one of the top 10 wedding photographers in the world. You're one of the most celebrated, like fearless photographers. And you don't like that doesn't just happen. You like that wasn't an accident. You didn't just stumble upon that. So something had to have happened within you to like want to either compete and get the best photo or or you see the world slightly different in a way that people find very compelling. So let's explore that route right
Sure.
there, I suppose. Like what are the elements for you that goes into a portfolio worthy Todd Laffler photo?
I mean, it's different today than it was back then, for
Sure.
sure. Um, to the point where, I had to rebrand my website, within the last like 2 years or so, to sort of try to migrate to more candid, real moments
Hmm.
rather than anything that I was setting up. Um, so back then, I think it was an interesting sort of time where wedding photography was starting to kind of explode into this, like, well, wait a minute, wedding photography doesn't have to look like wedding photography. That was kind of like what was happening at the time. So I'm kind of going back to like 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. It started becoming more sort of acceptable, and that, with the advent of blogs and things, like, you were able to see like what other people were doing. Um, and I think that's what sparked where we are even today. I feel like that was sort of the beginning of creative wedding photography that doesn't have to look like traditional wedding photography.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that was a crossroads for where we are today. So I was kind of, I guess, if you look back, kind of getting in on the groundish floor of that movement of trying to push wedding photography into something else. And quite honestly, it was kind of like a light bulb moment for me. I don't know if you're familiar with Ben Chrisman
Yes.
or not. Yeah. So I stumbled across his blog. Like I said, I don't know, it was like 2008, somewhere in there. And I was just like, I was blown away. I was like, wait, you can make images like this and you can get paid. And like, I was like, this is, sign me up. Right. And so, yeah. And so from there, I think I did do some emulation, to a point of trying to be, a little more like Ben, like, well, how does this actually work? How do you do this? Right. So just kind of getting my footing into straying away from the standard, the bride looking behind the bouquet and, that type of thing. Um, and then I feel like I did eventually migrate into sort of my own voice, into shooting what I felt was authentic or what I was coming up with. Didn't feel like I was copying anybody. Um, and a lot of that motivation, I think, just came from that time period of like, who's sort of creating work that's like different. And that seemed to be my drive. Like, the more different, the better. The more
Mm.
quirky, the more unusual, that was like the flavor of the day, and so that was a big drive, being a young photographer in the in terms of wedding photography, being a young wedding photographer. um that was a big drive for me to try to almost like prove yourself, like, hey, I can hang with the big boys, or I can do some cool stuff, like, I don't, whatever. And so that, yeah, I think that was my drive. And then when Fearless came along, I just started entering. And again, it's the same thing. It's like this crossroads time where you've got not as many good photographers at that point in time, just because I feel like the advent of social media and YouTubes and Facebook and all that stuff has accelerated the speed, or the entry point is much easier to sort of get to a good level with photography. Whereas back then
Mhm.
it was like, some trial and error. You kind of figured things out, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. I just think it was a little more difficult to advance your skills than it is today. So keeping that in mind, you have a smaller pool of good photographers doing creative stuff. So I have a tendency to downplay my abilities.
I was gonna say, you're being like super modest right now. Like, this is
it's
ridiculous.
just what I do. I cannot help it. It's a problem. But
you're like, there was only 12 photographers. So.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 of us. So like it wasn't that hard. It was just like, yeah, whatever. You win 10 awards in one round because whatever. So yeah, but then, like I said earlier, I think the danger of pursuing awards and likes and followers and getting accolades from your fellow photographers is it's just a never-ending treadmill of constantly having to do that. And if you're sort of relying on that for your self-esteem and your validation all the time, you'll never be satisfied. You'll just constantly be on this treadmill, just constantly churning out stuff that, and then feeling like, oh, no one liked that one. Oh boy, I suck, whatever. And then if someone does like it and they're like, wow, this is great. And then it's like, that's gone. Now what? And it's just like, it's just hollow. Again, nothing wrong with all that stuff. And I think it is sort of a natural progression for some photographers. And like we talked about earlier, I'm sure there's plenty of great photographers that we don't even know about just because they're not on social media. They don't feel like they need to be. So, again, we're only seeing, a sliver of what's out there.
So again, it might have been before we were recording, but you were talking about like the chasing the likes and all these things. And but at the same time, like making sure now that we capture photos that the couple's actually going to want, Right. And I think about that as well sometimes because what you were just talking about there when it comes to you were trying to get crazier and you were trying to get more creative and you were trying to get more unique. Was there a turning point in which you realized like, hey, wait a second, what am I doing this for? If like, was there a couple that didn't like a photo that pushed you in this direction?
No, I can't think of like a turning point per se. I think it was a gradual waning of realizing like it's like putting undue pressure on yourself to come up with something amazing at every wedding. And sometimes, you just don't feel like it. So,
yeah.
Like pushing yourself to like the limits of like, what can be done, which is fine. If you're, young and hungry and that's what you're into, that's totally fine. But at a certain point, you do it enough and it's just like, you're always trying to outdo yourself. And it just doesn't feel right. And then just looking back at some of the earlier work that sort of was so well received. And I look at it now and I'm just like, that's not, it's just not, like I said, it's not something that like a couple is going to run into a burning building to save. It's just not. It was more about me than it was about them. And I don't want to make the, I don't want to make it sound like I did that all day long. It was just like
right.
a couple sections of the wedding. I'm like, all right, now this is my time. I'm going to do that. And I don't do that really much anymore. I'm just like, let me just be observant and photograph what's in front of me and do a faithful job and document the wedding as best I can.
Well, I think it's hard because I know when it comes to the photographers who I've interviewed and the lessons that I try to teach to new photographers is that like one of the traps that they always get stuck in is when they just get the call like, hey, will you photograph our wedding? And they're like, yes. Now I have to go on Pinterest and figure out what do wedding photos look like, and then they want to emulate those. And then a year later they realize, wait, I don't like any of these photos, but now my entire portfolio is this. So I advocate like shoot or show what it is that you want to shoot, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, so you have another photo, which I love personally. And I think it's a couple, they're standing in front of like, I think it's like some sort of downtown art building. It's like a brick wall. But then there's a guy riding his bike through the frame. And this guy is like, no shirt on, beach mode, like shorts.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of photo to where I personally love that sort of thing. The dichotomy of like, perfectly dressed, best
Right.
day of our lives. Here we go. And then here's this guy, belly out, hairy, riding
Yeah.
through,
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
oblivious to this. But when it comes to the photos that the couples are going to want, is that do you show them that, like, hey, look, wedding photography can be different, and then you help guide them into the direction of maybe you do want these types of photos, maybe you do want something different, or is that just the photo that you capture for yourself?
I'd say that's the photo that, yeah, I capture for myself, and the old me would sort of operate under the guise that like clients are hiring me to do that, so it's okay that I do that. I was kind of justifying doing it. Whereas, honestly, now if it popped up like and I saw something cool developing, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'm gonna do it, right? But it's not like I don't feel like it's necessary.
Hmm.
Whereas before, I felt like I need to create something unusual. That's
Hmm.
why they're hiring me. And I've moved away from that, like I said, and then hopefully, I'm getting clients that are responding more to genuine moments that are not, I don't have a hand in necessarily,
Right.
right? Like I have a hand in this sense that I paid attention, I was diligent and cleaned up my frame and got the right moment and the right angle, but I'm not crafting, so to
Hmm.
speak, you know.
So let me see if I get this right. So you're moving more. Hold on, because now that I think about it, there's really two types of photos. There's the creative pre-visualization, like the photo of the father and the bride walking down the stairs with
Right.
the mirror. You pre-visualize that. But then there's this photo with this guy riding his bike through the frame, which you can't pre-visualize because you can't plan that guy to come through the
Right.
photo. You just have to wait for that moment. Are you saying that you're leaning more towards one than the other here? Did I get that right?
I'd say I'm not leaning towards either of those. To me,
Mm-hmm.
both of those seem like too constructed.
Uh-huh.
They're not too constructed. Um, so the guy on the bicycle, that type of stuff, I have I have other photos similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I've seen this work in the past, and it's sort of a formula, like, get the couple across the street, so to speak, and I get far away, so we're so far apart that any pedestrians don't stop and go, oh, sorry, sorry, like
Uh,
you just keep things moving. And it's just sort of like, telling the couple like, oh, like if you see someone coming from either direction, don't assume I'm not photographing, like that's probably a good time for you guys to ramp up the energy, actually. So
oh.
you get to know, like, you're coaching a little bit, like, and then I can just kind of keep an eye on what's happening either way, and wait for something interesting to happen. Those photos are fun, like more for like an engagement session, I feel like, because you have time, you don't have the pressure of we have to get to the whatever, the venue or whatever.
Yeah.
So you can afford some time to just kind of play and see what happens. And a lot of photos come out that way, where you don't know what's going to happen, and that's the fun part. And you're surprised because it's something you couldn't have even thought of. And sometimes
Right.
I feel like that's the beauty of letting your couple sort of, sometimes I call it, just freestyling, right? So like if I have a couple in front of a wall with even light, I'll do the regular shot, holding hands, looking at each other, they're happy, they have fun, whatever. And then I'll give them some space where they can freestyle. And because, all right, honestly, a lot of couples will be like, we don't know what to do, or they'll hug, and they'll just be like, wow, that's crazy, you guys just hug, that's total wacky freestyle. And it's fine, whatever. If they don't do it, then I'll have some prompts to help them, whatever. But some couples will do something that I could have just never dreamed of, and it's so much better than anything I could have thought of. And on top of that, they thought of it, so it's their photo. Like,
Yeah.
that's the win-win-win that, like, is the really cool and fun stuff to capture.
Uh-huh.
And then they're having fun. It's just like the perfect scenario. Like, I didn't have to do much, I just found a good wall with good light and let them do the work. They had fun doing it, they created a photo that's uniquely theirs, and it's better than anything I could come up with. Like, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Do you find that you typically do that when you're further back and you can say use a longer lens and kind of give them that space to do whatever they want? Or is that more of a I'm gonna get
If I
close to your
have
face?
if I have the ability, yeah, I'm almost always as far back as I can be,
Hmm.
because I don't want to feel like, I feel like the further away I am, the more natural
They
they
can be
can
with each
become.
other. Yeah.
Yeah. Just so, like I'm not within earshot and listening to what they're saying, and they might think like, oh, he's judging us or whatever. I'm not, like, I'm trying to be as far like removed as possible if I can. I'll still yell over, like, if I need them to, like, hey guys, I don't know, pretend you're robots, or, karate kick, whatever. Like, if I can still be within earshot, but I'm not like on top of them.
Yeah. I love that.
So, and
Karate
sometimes it
kick
doesn't
and
work. Like,
robots.
they'll just look at each other and be like confused, like we don't know what to do, and that's totally fine. You're like, you don't judge them for it. You just kind
Yeah.
of, then you need to reach in your back pocket and give them, try this. And a lot of
Try the
times
robot.
that, yeah, whatever it is, right? Like, I don't know, tickle fight or whatever, just get them moving.
Hmm.
And then a lot of times that sort of progresses into something else that becomes theirs. So
Mm.
it's just like giving the prompt and then let them run with it.
What's your favorite part of a wedding day? Is it the portraits where you put in the work and all eyes are on you to create something here, or is it earlier in the day, later in the day, where you're there to document?
Um, so I'm usually more at home on the dance floor, not personally dancing because I don't dance, but just photographing the dancing. Um, just because, you know, if you're on the dance floor and you're doing something crazy or whatever, like, yeah, it's like the walls have already been, like, I don't have to like do any work. Like, they're already expecting, like, yeah, of course the photographer is going to photograph you if you're doing something. Um, so the dance floor is always fun to me because people are less inhibited and maybe alcohol's involved, and um, you know that's just much easier to photograph and more interesting and fun, again, because it's not the potential to deviate from the typical wedding stuff is more rich in that
Right.
environment, where people feel it's a dance floor, so people are going to do what they're going to do. And it's not like, oh, we need to be quiet at this moment in the wedding, or we need to do, because honestly most weddings, there are formulaic, and that's just how they go.
Hmm. Yeah, you don't normally find a cousin jumping up on a pew and popping open a
Right.
bottle of champagne during
Sometimes, but yeah.
yeah, right. Very,
um
very rare. Much more
so
common
i
than
would i
this.
would say, yeah, the dance floor, I enjoy doing that. And then, believe it or not, kind of like the ceremony, just because I feel like it's such an emotionally rich environment that there's opportunity, and like there's no moving targets. Like, I
Sure.
can move around and sort of like really observe, take a moment to like, how is mom doing, how's dad doing, and um move around and get some different angles. And I, those types of that type of imagery to me is more interesting than anything that I shouldn't say more interesting than anything that would happen during prep, most likely.
Of course.
um it's just, it's usually pretty mind numbing. um
Yeah.
the
No,
prep,
I
and I
get it.
and I don't mind doing the portraits. But it's not my favorite, because I am sort of in control, which I don't mind, but it's not something I like feel like, oh yeah, this is
Hmm.
going to be great. Um and you know a lot of times I feel like it's a bit of an education process to my clients. Because sometimes, other wedding photographers out there will probably get this too, where the couple will request, oh, can we get a photo in front of the gazebo, or the fountain, or the piano, or the stairs, or whatever it is. um and I usually come back at them and I say, oh, okay, is there something sentimental or significant about that gazebo for you guys? Like, tell me, what's the backstory? And 9 times out of 10 it's like, I don't know, I just thought it would look cool, or that's where everybody gets their photo taken. So it's kind of like breaking them down a little bit. Like, why do you want to be photographed in front of a gazebo? What does
Yeah.
that mean for you guys? And trying to like get them at like, well, maybe it's not so much about what you're standing in front of. It's more about your connection with each other. And I tell my couples this, if I see red flags of like, we want to go here, we want to photograph there, because 9 times out of 10 you'll show up there and it's like half in sun, half in shade, and it just looks terrible. And I don't want to spend time forcing a photo that doesn't look good if it doesn't mean anything to them. Like, if it means something, I'm gonna try to make it happen. But not most of the time, they're just like, I don't know, just thought it was cool. So I'm constantly telling couples, like, for me, my priority is find a clean background. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, even light, and you guys are connected and having fun, or you look like you like each other. Like, that's the photo to me, is your relationship, not what you're standing in front of. And I feel like when I explain it that way, a lot, like a light bulb goes off for a lot of people, like, oh yeah, I guess it doesn't matter what we're standing in front of. Like, that's not important. So trying to like refocus their attention on like, yeah, like I want to capture your relationship more than I want to have something cool behind you or light it super cool. Like, it doesn't, it's fine. But like I said, I don't know that any of that stuff makes a client like that photo any more or less. So I always usually start from the ground up, meaning clean background and even light usually, and their connection with each other. Like, that's the photo to me. Like, once I have those 3 things, I'm good to go. I don't need to overcomplicate it.
Man, that is so like I don't think I could say it any better. Like you said, I don't need to overcomplicate it. That's so perfect, because I think oftentimes there is that propensity to want to overcomplicate things, because that makes you look, in a world where like everybody has a cell phone and everybody can capture like a pretty decent photo. It seems like clean background, moment. It's like, wait, we can just capture these things on a cell phone. Why would we not go all in? And as we were talking earlier, use the 6 flashes, use the smoke bombs, use all these other tools at our disposal. Of course, that has to make a better photo. But I mean, I look through just your Instagram feed, on your website, and there's this feeling of, while everything is very visually interesting to look at, it's also very clean. And I don't think that I would have described it that way without hearing you walk through that.
A huge fan of just keep it simple. Like, the heavy lifting of the photo, I feel, is the couple's connection with each other, not how cool the lighting is or what. And again, there's nothing wrong with that stuff. What bugs me is when people do all that cool stuff, but they miss on the connection with the couple. Yeah. If you can do all that cool stuff and have this great connection with the couple,
score,
banger. That's awesome. I personally just don't feel like it's not something I want to pursue, because I think it's more than I think is necessary personally. Right. But like I said, I have nothing against anybody trying extra hard and doing creative things. Just make sure that the couple is connected, like, always. That's your photo. Like, no dangling arms, like they just kind of like just sitting there staring at each other. Like, they should be like into each other, and like tight, and body language, and everything needs to connect.
So when you do find a couple who isn't naturally that way, in what ways do you kind of push them towards that?
So, I mean, I can direct them physically to, make sure that they have good positive body language, by pulling their torsos in, by having the hands not just limply, the guy just limply, like holding her waist. Like, you got to sell it, right?
Yeah.
So there are times where I do need to direct some of that stuff, but I can't direct like smile better, smile more, laugh more, like I can't physically do that. I can make sure that their body language looks positive if they're not doing it naturally. And then the last step is, getting the emotion out of them. And that may be, if it's not happening naturally, sometimes I'll just pull back and just wait. And they forget that they're being photographed. I'll take forever. and they just might start talking and something funny will come up, or I'll just yell over, hey, in your sexiest voice, whisper the word sausage in her ear or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that, it's like what comes after that, which is the photo. So you
Right.
kind of have to like, massage things a little bit once in a while. And I do find that, like, if I have a couple that is not that at ease, I try to get a lot of time with my couples. So I tell them, like, I do like to have the time with them because I don't want to feel stressed. I don't want to feel like I need to rush through this. I would rather craft like 5 or 6 really great images that are clean and nice, rather than make like 10 to 15 mediocre ones where there's no connection and no, nothing happening. And I tell my couples, like, let's say I'm going to get an hour with them. Like, you guys, I want you guys to look at this time as pseudo alone time for you guys to connect with each other on your wedding day, because the whole day everybody's coming at them from every direction, which is normal. But I try to reframe it so that it's a positive thing for them to give me time, because they can hang out with each other and just chill out. But not only that, like, their photos, eventually they'll relax more. Like, if I have to do everything in 10 minutes, how relaxed do you think they can ever look? So after 45 minutes to an hour, they're like, oh yeah, I get the hang of this is easy. So that's another aspect to it. And then just freeing up time for me to not feel rushed, that I can craft images and actually, figure things out instead of just rushing through them. But on top of all that, if I have a couple that I seem like they're not quite meshing, I usually just try to get them moving. And a lot of times that can be as simple as just hold hands. I go as far away as possible with 70 to 200, and just have them walk towards me and looking at each other. Like, that's a classic wedding shot. It's like one of my favorites to do because it just looks natural. They're walking, they're interacting with each other, and a lot of times they're walking, and it's just like they forget they're being photographed a little bit. And I think if even just asking them to thumb wrestle, right? Because now they're focused on thumb wrestling and not being photographed and what they look like. So that's something that can, relax people, I think, and you can get more natural photos out of your couple if you get them involved in something.
Sure. Yeah. Give them that distraction. Well, I surely have gained a lot of information and tips today, like thumb wrestling. Never would have thought about that. That is a great tip right there.
And it's not always the thumb wrestling, right? It's like, again, you prompt something, but it's what it leads to and where they take it.
Of course.
You sort of give them permission to play, that this isn't all like, do exactly as the photographer says. Just like, it's okay for you guys to play and have fun. And that's kind of where I'm trying to capture.
I don't think we could end this any better than that, Todd. That was that was fantastic, man. Before I let you go, first of all, you've been so gracious with your time and sharing your knowledge here and your honest opinions, which I think is great. There's a lot of people in the industry who, as you were saying earlier, try to sell how fantastic this is, and sometimes it does feel like a grind, and I appreciate that perspective. So before I let you go, I know that listeners are going to want to find out more about you and see some of your work online. So can you share where exactly they should go to do that?
Yeah, sure. So the best place would just be to go to my website, which would be lafflerphotography.com, Laff, like Frank, LER, photography.com. That pretty much has like a good smattering of my more recent work, which I think would, give people an idea of, what I'm all about these days.
Perfect. Well, again, Todd, I thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for inviting me, Raymond. It was great talking to you.
Man, that was such a refreshing interview. And I don't know if it's just me, but, I hope that you feel better about photography. I feel better about photography after this. This was one of those no nonsense type interviews, and it was just broken down so easy to understand exactly how Todd sees the world, and that it felt just super, super rejuvenating. I think my biggest takeaway from this episode with Todd Laffler was just how not to complicate things. It is so easy to do that when we live in a world where more is more, quote unquote. And in photography, it is just so easy to go overboard with adding everything into your frame, using colored flashes, using smoke bombs, and then some sort of crazy composition to tie it all together, using a slow shutter. Just really trying to bring everything into a photo when it doesn't necessarily need to be there. And Todd's story first approach, to me, was really, honestly, a breath of fresh air that I'm going to implement going forward in my weddings, or that it just helps me to remember, that the day isn't about my photos. Sure, I'm being hired to go to a wedding and to take photos, but the day is about this couple and their relationship and their friends and family and bringing everybody together. And my photos are secondary. So having that photo first approach is just, story first approach. Again, breath of fresh air there. I would love to know your biggest takeaway from this episode with Todd Laffler. You can share it in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. Again, you can join by just searching Facebook for Beginner Photography Podcast. You'll find it right there. Again, I'd love to hear what it is. So that is it for this week. Until next week, I want you to keep shooting. I want you to stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.
I loved this conversation, not only because I feel like we're kind of in the same spot where I feel like I don't think weddings are going to be in my future much longer, but also I think with your experience, there's so much there that that you shared today that I've learned a bunch, and it kind of
Cool.
renews my energy that I'm excited
Awesome. That's great.
for next weekend's wedding, because I love the creative aspect of it. I love getting out there, and I love trying to produce something new, but it's just that, like, everything else is I just don't think that there's, while I love weddings, there's also a lot that I don't love about weddings, and I think that
Sure.
outweighs the love for it,
I think that means just that you're human. Like, I would question someone who loves every aspect of a wedding day. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Some of it's just
and it's so hard because we are taught that, as you were saying, it's like you have to love it. You have to love it so much that you just want to explode. And that's just not who I am. But
yeah,
I don't
and
know.
honestly, I would challenge anybody who says, "Oh, you don't have a love for wedding photography anymore," and I honestly don't believe like my work is anything less because I
Right.
have that feeling. Like, I can turn it on the wedding day and do what I need to do, and it doesn't mean I'm not trying. It doesn't mean I'm not giving 110%. So, I think I feel like there's a little bit of a stigma, like, if you don't love this, balls to the wall, like, love everything about it, that maybe somehow you're, I don't know, less than somehow. I'm not I'm fortunate that I've been doing it this long and I've been able to make a living at it. That is not lost on me by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that if you do any one thing for too long, chances are, you're going to get burnout eventually.